Dean Martin seemed to have it all: fame, money, and millions of fans who loved him. Everyone called him the King of Cool, that smooth singer with the perfect voice and easy Hollywood style from the old days. But behind his chill smile and the whiskey glass he always held during shows, his real life was falling apart quietly. The truth is, Dean spent his last years like a ghost of the man he used to be, crushed by sadness, stuck in bad memories, and quietly looked after by the woman who once loved him the most. Jean, most people spelled it Jean, but she went by Jean, had been married to him for 24 years. Even after the divorce, she never stopped caring. The world thought Dean was unbreakable, but Jean saw what fame really stole from him. She saw the loneliness, the regrets, and the horrible losses that nobody could protect him from. Their story started with glitter and ended in awful pain. It's a story about love, staying loyal, and death that even Hollywood couldn't make up. This is the sad last part of Dean Martin's life, and the woman who watched him slip away slowly from a small town in Ohio all the way to the top. Dean Martin's life didn't start in some fancy house or on a movie set. It started on the tough, gray streets of Steubenville, Ohio, a steel town right by the Ohio River. He was born Dino Paul Crocetti on June 7, 1917, to two Italian parents who came to America for a better life. His dad, Gaetano Crocetti, came from Abruzzo, Italy in 1913 and opened a little barber shop. His mom, Angela, was born in America but grew up super Italian and loved to sing. Their house was always full of laughing, good food, and Italian songs, but they were pretty poor and hardly ever spoke English. When Dino started school, he couldn't understand the teacher at all. His strong accent made the other kids bully him nonstop, teasing him, copying his bad English. Broke N English. He later joked that he was too smart for school, but really, feeling so alone pushed him to quit. By 10th grade, he dropped out completely, sure that life would teach him more than books ever could. And life hit him hard right away. He took any job he could get, working in a steel mill, pumping gas, delivering milk, even running illegal alcohol during Prohibition. He also boxed under the name Kid Crochet, a skinny welterweight fighter who had 12 fights and only won one. "I won all but 11, he'd laugh years later, hiding the hurt with jokes. The ring gave him a broken nose, split lip, and scarred knuckles. Later, when he got famous, his comedian friend Lou Costello paid to fix his nose, a small thing that helped create his cool, handsome look. Back then, Dino shared a tiny apartment in New York with his buddy and fellow performer Sonny King. They were broke, but clever. When cash was gone, they put on bare-knuckle fights right in their living room and charged $5 a ticket. A good night made them $50, just enough for rent. Bad nights, they'd fake phone calls in diners just to sneak bites from plates people left behind. It was during those hungry years that Dean's natural charm started showing up. He worked as a dealer in an illegal gambling place hidden behind a tobacco store, and he'd sing quietly between card games to keep the players happy. One night, a bandleader named Ernie McKay heard him and offered him a real singing gig. Dean said yes, and everything changed. He started performing as Dino Martini, named after the famous Italian singer Nino Martini, and toured around Ohio and Pennsylvania. By 1940, he joined bandleader Sammy Watkins, who gave him one piece of advice that stuck forever. "Kid, you've got the voice, but if you want to make it big, lose the I. Make it Dean Martin." It was a tiny change, but it made the name sound smooth, American, and impossible to forget. And just like that, the legend of Dean Martin started growing, but he had no clue how much joy and pain that name would bring him later. Love, marriage, heartbreak, all of it was coming. By the early 1940s, Dean's career was finally climbing. He had the voice, the charm, and the drive. But he still didn't have a steady life. That changed in 1941 when he met Elizabeth Ann Betty McDonald, a sweet girl from Ohio who fell for him way before he was famous. They got married that same year, long before Dean Martin meant anything to the world. Together they struggled through the early days, tiny club gigs, shows that didn't pay, and never knowing if the dream would work out. Betty became his rock. While Dean sang in smoky bars, she stayed home taking care of their kids as the family grew. They had 4 children: Craig in 1941, Claudia in 1944, Gail in 1945, and Deanna in 1948. On stage, Dean's relaxed smile and gentle voice made everyone love him. Off stage, he was just a regular dad trying to pay bills. He was charming but restless. Fame was knocking louder, and with fame came temptations no marriage could fight forever. As his career took off, the marriage started breaking. Betty fought terrible alcoholism and would disappear for days or weeks. Dean was surrounded by pretty women, bright lights, and non-stop parties. He gave in. People in Hollywood whispered about his affairs, but newspapers almost never printed it. Dean's public image, the classy guy with a drink and a joke, kept the rumors quiet. But at home, everything was ruined. By 1949, the marriage was over. Dean filed for divorce and got full custody of all 4 kids, super rare back then. Betty moved far away to San Francisco, staying out of the spotlight that was about to swallow her ex-husband. She lived the rest of her life quietly and died in 1989, long after Dean had moved on, but never fully escaped her shadow. Just 1 week after the divorce was final, Dean Marr cheated again, this time to Jean Beager, a beautiful model and former Orange Bowl queen. Their wedding on September 1, 1949 was a big Hollywood party, with his comedy partner Jerry Lewis as best man. Jean was pure grace and loyalty. For a while it really looked like Dean had found peace. She was by his side for his biggest wins, the funny movies with Jerry, going solo and becoming huge, joining the Rat Pack. They had 3 kids together, Dean Paul in 1951, Richie in 1953, and Gina in 1956. Jean raised all 7 of Dean's children, hers and Betty's, in the same house. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect glamorous family. But fame is never solid ground. As Dean got more famous, he was gone more, partied harder, and cheated more. Jean forgave him over and over, but by the late 1960s, even she couldn't take it anymore. In 1973, after 24 years, they divorced. Dean married 1 more time after that, but everyone who knew him said Jean was the real love of his life, and losing her broke something in him forever. When Dean walked away from his 10-year comedy team with Jerry Lewis in 1956, tons of people thought he'd ruined his career. Critics said he was just the straight man and couldn't make it alone. But Dean proved them all wrong. In just 2 years, he became one of the coolest, most magnetic stars in America. His comeback really exploded in Las Vegas when he started hanging and performing with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. Together, they became the Rat Pack, a crew of sharp, wild-living guys who owned the Strip. Night after night, they packed the Sands Hotel, amazing crowds with their friendship, jokes, and total coolness. To fans, they were pure class and style. On stage, Dean looked like the wildest one, cigarette in one hand, whiskey in the other, tie messy, grin crooked. But most of that was an act, his wise. Ski was usually apple juice. The slurred words and lazy jokes were fake, so good that even Sinatra said Dean fooled everybody. He was actually the only sober one most nights. The act made him a superstar, but it also built a wall. People stopped seeing the real Dean. He became just the king of cool, a symbol, even when he felt broken inside. Behind the scenes, he was quiet, kept to himself, and often super lonely. He almost never went to the wild after-parties or gambled all night like Sinatra. When the show ended, he usually went home, watched TV, and went to sleep alone. Still, nobody could deny his magic. Movies like Rio Bravo and The Young Lions shut up every critic. He showed real acting depth nobody expected. Hollywood had tried to keep him as just the funny singer guy, but Dean smashed that box. Then, in 1965, came The Dean Martin Show on NBC. The network wanted his charm on TV, but Dean made crazy demands no other star would try. No rehearsals, only film 1 day a week, and he owned the show after the first airing. Shockingly, yes, it became a monster hit. 264 episodes, over 40 million people watching every week. A whole TV empire built just on Dean being Dean. He walked on stage every week, looking like he hadn't prepared at all. And that was the magic. It was real him. Relaxed, funny, untouchable. But the more famous he got, the emptier he felt inside. All the applause, famous friends, money, it was real, but it didn't last. Dean once said, "If you've got luck, you don't need to be smart, but luck runs out." And by the late 1970s, his luck and his heart were running out. On March 21st, 1987, Dean Martin's world completely shattered. His son, Dean Paul, a good-looking actor, musician, and Air National Guard pilot, died at 35 when his F-4C Phantom jet crashed into a California mountain in a snowstorm. Dean Paul was his dad's favorite, the golden boy. They had a super close, quiet bond. Dean had survived divorce, fame, scandals, but nothing prepared him for losing his son. The search for the plane lasted 6 painful days. When it ended, Dean shut down. Friends said he was never the same after that. He stopped smiling, stopped performing, stopped caring about anything. His old friend, comedian Rich Little, said losing Dean Paul was the end of Dean. Right then, Dean was supposed to start a big tour with Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. called The Ultimate Event, a Rat Pack reunion everyone was excited for. But after the crash, he just couldn't do it. He tried the first few shows, looking lost and empty, then quit in the middle of the tour. Sinatra begged him to come back, but Dean said no. Jean, his ex-wife, dropped everything and came to him. Even though they'd been divorced over 10 years, she was the only person who could reach him. She stayed close, checking on him all the time, eating at the same restaurant where he sat alone every night. She didn't push or talk too much. She just quietly watched over him as he faded away. That awful year killed Dean's spirit for good. The world still saw the charming guy who sang, "Everybody loves somebody sometime." But the people closest to him saw a man eaten up by grief. When he said, "I'm just waiting to die," It wasn't a joke anymore. It was the truth. After 1987, Dean slowly vanished from public life. He almost never performed, almost never went out, and spent most nights sitting by himself in the same Beverly Hills restaurant, the same place Johnny would quietly sit nearby, keeping an eye on him even when they barely spoke. It was like she couldn't stop protecting him, even without words. By 1993, his health was failing fast. Years of heavy smoking finally caught up. Doctors found lung cancer and begged him to have surgery. He said no. "I've had a good life," he told friends. That short sentence held all the tiredness of a man who lost too much. His last months were quiet. Old photos, TV reruns, memories of his son fading. The guy who once made whole nightclubs roar with laughter now sat in almost total darkness, waiting for the end. On Christmas morning, December 25, 1995, Dean Martin died at age 78 from breathing failure caused by emphysema. Hollywood was shocked. Frank Sinatra, crying, called him "my brother," not by blood, but by choice. 3 days later, Las Vegas honored him the only way they knew how. For 10 full minutes, every light on the Strip went dark. The Sands, Flamingo, Stardust, everything went black and quiet. The city he helped make famous stopped for the man who made it shine. Dean was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. His tombstone has the simple line from his biggest hit, "Everybody loves somebody sometime." Jean never married again. For the rest of her life, she lived quietly, surrounded by pictures of the kids and Dean. She died of cancer in 2016 at age 89 and was buried close to him. Their son Richie, who spent his life keeping his dad's music alive, passed away just weeks before her. The Martin family gave the world beauty, laughs, and songs we'll never forget. But behind all that shine was a lifetime of heartbreak. Dean's last years weren't filled with fame or cheering crowds, just silence and the quiet, unbreakable love of a woman who never stopped caring. Jean watched him disappear, unable to stop the slow pain that started the day they lost their son. In the end, she followed him, finishing a love story that began in bright lights and ended in darkness. Their names are carved in Hollywood history, but their real story is one of hurt, loyalty, and loss that money and fame could never hide.